Now, in retaliation, the Iranian regime has launched over 500 ballistic missiles and over 2,000 drones. To be clear, Iran is indiscriminately targeting civilians as they launch.
The Middle Eastern night sky suddenly lit up with an unprecedented rain of firepower. In just 24 short hours, over 1,000 strategic targets were leveled as supreme power unexpectedly collapsed, and the campaign dubbed Epic Fury forever altered the course of global history. But behind the terrifying, destructive power of suicide drone swarms and state-of-the-art weaponry, what price is humanity paying for these conflict-driven ambitions? How fragile is the line between peace and all-out war? Join us as we decode this shocking event right now. Don't forget to leave a comment sharing your personal perspective, hit like, and subscribe to the channel to keep accompanying us in our upcoming in-depth analytical videos. In the early hours of the last day of February 2026, the world woke up to a historic geopolitical shockwave. At exactly 1:15 a.m., a massive military campaign named Epic Fury was officially activated. United States military forces, in close coordination with their Israeli allies, launched a lightning-fast bombardment aimed directly at Iranian territory. This coalition was to completely neutralize the missile threat and weapons proliferation efforts that Tehran had pursued for so long. Within the first 24 hours of the order being given, the regional dynamics of the Middle East had completely transformed. Over 1,000 strategic targets across Iran were subjected to fierce bombardments and heavily devastated. This event immediately marked an irreversible turning point in the history of modern international relations. It not only claimed the lives of the top figures in the Iranian regime's supreme leadership, but also directly ignited a spiral of violence, triggering brutal retaliatory strikes that spread across the entire region. Through this, we can see the incredibly fragile boundary between military deterrence efforts and the risk of an all-out war breaking out. To materialize a lightning strike blanketing over 1,000 targets in record time, U.S. Central Command had to play its most powerful strategic cards. They mobilized a massive, diverse, and cutting-edge arsenal of military hardware unseen in recent conflicts. The U.S. Air Force and Navy unleashed a rain of devastating firepower, leaving the adversary with almost no chance to defend themselves. The standout of this campaign was the formidable appearance of B-2 stealth strategic bombers hurriedly deployed to the Middle East. They acted as the sharpest spearheads, silently piercing through the enemy's dense air defense systems before delivering the decisive blow. Flanking those giant bombers was an aerial combat formation of unprecedented scale. This force included fifth-generation stealth fighters like the F-22 and F-35, along with multi-role F-16 and F-18 fighter jets constantly roaring across the skies of the conflict hotspots. To ensure absolute success, the U.S. military also deployed a 10 ground attack aircraft for close air support and EA-18G electronic warfare aircraft tasked with suppressing and completely jamming the enemy's radar systems. Alongside this was a dense network of airborne early warning platforms, RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft, and a fleet of heavy transport and aerial refueling tankers operating tirelessly. Operating alongside U.S. forces, the Israeli military also made its mark with the largest-scale aerial sortie in the nation's military history. Hundreds of fighter jets relentlessly dropped bombs on key Iranian military bases. Looking toward the sea, U.S. Navy warships, including massive nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and guided missile destroyers, continuously launched barrages of Tomahawk cruise missiles with absolute precision. Parallel to the offensive-defense systems were also maximally activated. Patriot interceptor batteries, the THAAD high-altitude ballistic missile defense system, and HIMARS multiple rocket launchers formed a steel shield protecting Allied forces and standing ready to intercept any counterattacks. One of the most notable and groundbreaking highlights of this campaign was the spectacular shift in non-traditional combat tactics. U.S. Central Command officially confirmed that for the first time in military history, the Scorpion Strike Special Task Force deployed one-way attack drones into actual combat in massive numbers. This army of suicide drones created immense pressure, completely overwhelming the enemy's response capabilities. This event not only marked a new leap in weapons technology, but also opened up profound debates about the future of automated warfare, where machines are gradually replacing humans in highly destructive missions. The drone series used in the campaign was designated Lucas, a low-cost combat attack system developed by the engineering firm SpectreWorks. Astonishingly, each Lucas unit costs only about $35,000, a highly modest figure compared to million-dollar missiles. They can be launched with extreme flexibility from simple launchers, modified civilian vehicles, or mobile ground platforms. However, the most profoundly symbolic and somewhat ironic aspect is that these Lucas drones were designed to accurately mimic Iran's famous Shahed drones. This was seen as giving them a taste of their own medicine, delivering punishment from the very designs Tehran once took pride in. Viewed from an educational and humanitarian perspective, the development of drone technology brings about deeply profound reflections. Human intellect has created outstanding scientific and technical advancements, but how we use those advancements dictates the fate of all humanity. A technology that could be applied for rescue operations, medical transport, or exploring nature has now been turned into weapons of mass destruction at a dirt-cheap cost. This places a massive moral responsibility on scientists, policymakers, and the entire international community. We must educate the younger generation to understand that technology only truly brings value when it serves life, peace, and the common prosperity of mankind, rather than sowing fear and death. In just 24 short hours, the campaign's devastation had engulfed Iran's entire core command and defense system. According to official announcements, the airstrikes successfully hit their marks and completely destroyed the headquarters, including the joint headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Aerospace Force headquarters. Integrated air defense systems once considered impenetrable underground ballistic missile bases. The Iranian Navy's fleet of warships and submarines and the entire military communications infrastructure were all reduced to rubble. Images of massive columns of black smoke billowing in the heart of the capital Tehran became the clearest testament to the terrifying destructive power of modern warfare. However, the decisive blow that shook Iran's entire power structure was the death of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. U.S. intelligence had mapped out a meticulously detailed surveillance plan for months before making the final call. A pinpoint-accurate airstrike costing $10 million and reportedly carried out directly by Israeli forces completely leveled his compound in the capital, Tehran. The departure of the country's most powerful figure, along with dozens of other high-ranking officials, immediately plunged Iran into a state of utter panic. The regime was cast into darkness, both literally and figuratively, sparking widespread power outages and a pervasive atmosphere of paranoia. The death of the supreme leader was not just a political incident, but also opened a highly uncertain historical chapter harboring countless risks for the deeply rooted theocratic regime in this nation. This event poses a daunting dilemma regarding the power vacuum and the future leadership transition process. From another angle, this development ignited intense emotional waves from the exiled Iranian community worldwide. Many saw this as a fragile ray of hope to change the country's destiny. Through the lens of history, this event reminds us of the eternal truth that no matter how entrenched in absolute power may be, it cannot last forever without consensus and a solid foundation of the people's hearts. As an inevitable consequence of extreme military actions, this campaign immediately faced a fierce and furious response from Tehran. As the campaign entered its second day, the Middle Eastern sky was torn apart by massive waves of retaliatory missiles from Iran. The targets of these attacks were aimed squarely at strategic U.S. military bases stationed in allied nations such as Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. This retaliation officially turned a unilateral bombardment into a full-scale regional conflict directly threatening the safety of millions of innocent civilians and shaking the foundations of global security. The most tragic consequence of any war is always measured in human lives, and this time was no exception. Announcements from the U.S. military confirmed the first casualties, with 3 service members fallen and 5 others permanently disabled while carrying out their duties. In Israel, grief also took hold as 9 civilians were confirmed dead following the retaliatory strikes. Sadly, the flames of conflict did not stop at military targets, but spread to civilian areas, exemplified by the fire at a bustling hotel in Dubai, causing unnecessary casualties. This is the most brutal proof that violence can never solve the root of any problem. Iran's network of proxy militant groups stretching from Iraq to Lebanon also quickly spoke up and prepared to enter the war, pushing the region into an uncontrollable state of chaos. The world's vital waterway at the Strait of Hormuz was on the verge of total blockade due to attacks and electronic jamming. The conflict's fallout even reached beyond the Middle Eastern borders into Pakistan, where angry mobs stormed the U.S. consulate, leading to the tragic deaths of at least 9 people. The costliest lesson we must deeply realize is that violence only breeds violence, and the vicious cycle of revenge will only drag humanity deeper into an endless sea of blood and tears. On the domestic political front of the United States, this historic attack created deep divisions and highly multifaceted reactions. Leaders such as President Donald Trump, along with Republican senators and representatives, spoke out strongly, considering this a righteous and necessary military action to eliminate existential threats to national security and the safety of American citizens. They argued that maximizing deterrence was the only way to maintain order and protect the interests of the free world. This stance reflects a pragmatic security philosophy, where hard power is prioritized in resolving international crises. However, alongside the praise, a profound wave of concern also surged strongly right in the heart of America's highest legislative bodies. Members of the House of Representatives had to hold a series of emergency meetings to assess the campaign's scale of destruction and legal implications, while urging a transparent vote on war powers. Strategic analysts also issued weighty warnings, pointing out that a prolonged war would not only drain the country's economic resources and weapons stockpiles, but also pose incredibly difficult challenges in controlling the escalation of violence. Regime change by force has never been a perfect solution and always harbors unpredictable consequences for future generations. Looking at the international stage, the reactions of nations and organizations clearly reflect the complexity of the current global geopolitical landscape. While some allies like the United Kingdom showed support by providing logistical military bases, other powers like Russia harshly condemned it, viewing the assassination of national leaders as a severe violation of moral standards and international law. Particularly, the deeply humane warnings from the Holy Father at the Vatican touched the conscience of millions as he pointed out that escalating the conflict would only push the Middle East into an unrecoverable abyss. At the United Nations Forum, the fiercely confrontational atmosphere among envoys also revealed the sad reality that the path to peace is still fraught with too many thorns and barriers. The military campaign named Epic Fury has been leaving its mark on human history as one of the clearest testaments to the terrifying, destructive power of modern weapons technology. From the perfect combination of giant bombers and cruise missiles carrying devastating power to thousands of tiny, yet incredibly dangerous suicide drones, everything painted a panoramic picture of a new era of warfare fiercer and more unpredictable than ever before. While this lightning-fast bombardment might achieve temporary tactical goals, destroying military facilities and eliminating the enemy's leadership apparatus, it certainly cannot bring about a true and lasting peace. From the tragic events that have recently occurred, especially the prolonged and escalating conflicts in Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, Gaza, and other hotspots, the international community needs to draw profound educational lessons about the value of dialogue, tolerance, and humanity in resolving international disputes. Human history has proven time and again that no conflict, whether territorial disputes, ideological differences, or clashes of interest, can be resolved at its roots through the barrel of a gun or senseless bombs. Force only brings days of death, destruction, and hatred that span generations. In 2025, Ukraine witnessed its deadliest year for civilians since the conflict erupted, with over 2,500 people killed and more than 12,000 injured by missile, drone, and bomb attacks. Frequent airstrikes on cities, schools, hospitals, and civilian infrastructure left millions without power, clean water, and shelter, pushing them into misery amidst a harsh winter. Similarly, in Sudan, the civil war between factions has claimed the lives of over 150,000 people since 2023, causing horrific famine, ethnic genocide in Darfur, and the world's largest refugee wave, with over 11 million people forced to flee their homeland. Myanmar continues to see thousands of civilians killed by airstrikes and violence, while Gaza, despite temporary ceasefires, still bears the deep scars of over 70,000 deaths and almost entirely devastated infrastructure. The loss of life. The destruction of infrastructure and the mental wounds deeply etched in the memories of innocent civilians are too high a price that no nation or people deserve to bear. Children losing parents, shattered families, and future generations robbed of the opportunity to learn and live in peace, all are direct consequences of choosing violence over dialogue. The heartbreaking images of children fleeing from bombs of villages burned to the ground, or of mothers weeping over their children's bodies, are not just personal tragedies, but a wake-up call for all humanity. It is time for humanity to truly wake up. We must set aside selfish political calculations, group interests, or hegemonic ambitions to work together in building a sustainably peaceful world. Sincere diplomacy based on mutual respect, listening, and reasonable compromise is the only way to resolve disagreements in the long term. International organizations like the United Nations need to have their mediating roles strengthened. Major powers must prioritize peace over arms races, and the global community must promote education on tolerance and human rights from an early age to prevent hatred from spreading. Peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice, dialogue, and humanity. Only when we value humanistic values above short-term interests can the world avoid similar tragedies in the future. Let painful losses become the driving force for change rather than a scar that repeats forever. Through this historical narrative, each of us needs to be more aware of our responsibility to cultivate and spread noble humanistic values. Let us teach future generations how to cherish life, love peace, and understand the pain of our fellow human beings who are suffering the consequences of war. Only when love and empathy prevail can we hope for a brighter tomorrow where the dark clouds of conflict and violence forever recede into the past, making way for the blue sky of freedom, equality, and fraternity. That is the greatest and most meaningful victory that all of humanity must strive toward.